In 2008, a team of archaeologists crawled into a narrow limestone cave in southwestern Germany called Hohle Fels. They had been digging through layers of sediment for years, pulling out stone tools and fragments of ivory. But on this particular excavation, buried beneath nearly 5 meters of packed earth, they found something that stopped the entire team cold. It was a hollow tube, about 22 centimeters long, carved from the wing bone of a griffon vulture. 5 small finger holes had been carefully bored along one side. It was a flute, and it was roughly 40,000 years old. That made it the oldest known musical instrument ever discovered. A human being living in an Ice Age world full of mammoths and cave lions and glaciers the size of countries had sat down and built something whose only purpose was to make sound. Not a weapon, not a tool for cutting meat or scraping hides. A flute. That tells you something about what mattered to the people who came before us. That was 40,000 years ago. By 5,000 years ago, entire civilizations were rising and falling to the sound of lyres and drums and chanting voices. So what happened in between? And why did music matter so much that humans kept making it even when survival itself was not guaranteed? The Swabian Jura region of Germany, roughly 40,000 years before the present. The world looked nothing like it does today. Ice sheets covered most of northern Europe, stretching in massive frozen walls across what is now Scandinavia and the British Isles. The landscape south of those glaciers was cold steppe and tundra, windswept grasslands dotted with cave openings that served as shelter for small bands of Homo sapiens who had migrated out of Africa and into Europe only a few thousand years earlier. These were not primitive people. They made sophisticated stone blades with multiple cutting edges. They carved figurines from mammoth ivory, including the oldest known example of figurative art, a small lion-headed human figure called the Lowenmensch, found in a cave not far from Hohle Fels. They sewed animal hides into fitted clothing using bone needles. They traded materials across distances of hundreds of kilometers, and apparently, they played music. The vulture bone flute from Hohle Fels was not the only instrument found in that region. Archaeologists recovered fragments of at least 3 other flutes from nearby caves, including Vogelherd and Geissenkloster, some carved from mammoth ivory, which is far harder to work with than hollow bird bone. Whoever made these instruments was not experimenting randomly. They were refining a craft. The carving technique for ivory flutes required splitting a section of tusk lengthwise, hollowing out each half, and then fitting the halves back together with an airtight seal. That is precision work, and it suggests a tradition passed down over generations. The finger hole spacing on the Hohle Fels flute produces intervals that line up with what we now call a pentatonic scale, a 5-note scale that shows up in folk music across almost every culture on Earth, from West African drumming to East Asian court music to Appalachian mountain ballads. Whether that is coincidence or evidence of something hardwired into human hearing is still debated. But the pattern is hard to ignore. This is where the story takes a turn nobody expected, because the Hohle Fels flute might not even be the oldest evidence of music. In 1995, deep inside a cave in Slovenia called Divje Babe, archaeologists found a fragment of a cave bear femur with what appeared to be evenly spaced holes punched through it. The layer of sediment it was buried in dated to roughly 60,000 years ago, and the beings living in that region 60,000 years ago were not Homo sapiens. They were Neanderthals. If Divje Babe is a real flute, and not just a bone chewed up by a hyena, which is the competing explanation, then music did not originate with our species at all. It originated with our cousins, a completely separate branch of the human family tree who went extinct roughly 40,000 years ago. The debate is fierce and still unresolved. Ivan Turk, the archaeologist who found the bone, spent years arguing that the hole spacing is too regular, too symmetrical, and too precisely aligned to be random carnivore damage. His opponents point to experiments where researchers gave cave bear bones to wolves and hyenas and showed that their teeth can produce similar puncture patterns. But even beyond Divje Babe, there are other clues. Cave sites across France and Spain associated with Neanderthal habitation show stalactites and stalagmites with percussion marks, spots where someone struck the rock formations repeatedly, producing ringing tones that echo through underground chambers. Archaeoacoustics researchers have tested these formations and found they produce distinct pitches. Some of the most heavily marked formations happen to be in cave locations with the best natural acoustics. And no, that is not a coincidence. Somebody was choosing where to play. And then there is the anatomy. Neanderthal hyoid bones, the small horseshoe-shaped bone in the throat that supports the tongue and allows complex vocalization, are virtually identical to those of modern humans. Their ear structures, based on CT scans of fossilized temporal bones, indicate hearing sensitivity in the same frequency range we use for speech and music. They had the equipment. The question is whether they used it. And for the purposes of this story, the answer almost does not matter, because by the time modern humans arrived in Europe and started carving flutes from vulture bones, music was already part of the toolkit. Something in the human lineage had been making deliberate, patterned sound for a very long time. So the question becomes, why? Why would early humans, living in conditions where calories were precious and every hour of daylight mattered for survival, spend time and effort creating something that does not feed you, does not protect you from predators, and does not keep you warm? What was music actually doing for these people? The answer, according to a growing body of research in evolutionary psychology and neuroscience, is that music was doing something far more important than any single tool could. It was holding groups together. Robin Dunbar, the British anthropologist best known for proposing that human social groups max out at around 150 people, what is now called Dunbar's number, has argued that music evolved as a form of social grooming. In primate groups, physical grooming, picking insects and parasites off each other's fur, serves a critical bonding function. It builds trust, reduces cortisol levels, triggers endorphin release, and reinforces social hierarchies. But physical grooming is slow. You can only groom one individual at a time. As human groups grew larger and more complex, Dunbar argues, we needed a way to bond with multiple people simultaneously. Singing and rhythmic movement were the answer. When a group of people sings together, their breathing synchronizes. Their heart rates begin to align. Neurochemically, group singing triggers the release of endorphins and oxytocin, the same chemicals involved in physical touch, nursing, and romantic pair bonding. Making music together makes your brain feel like you are being embraced by the entire group at once. I mean, think about that for a second. The reason music feels good is not random. It is not a bug in the system. It is an evolved mechanism for making you trust the people around you. And the evidence for this bonding theory shows up in some of the earliest human behaviors we can trace. Mothers across every known culture sing to their infants. Lullabies are one of the few truly universal features of human societies, appearing in hunter-gatherer groups in the Amazon, agricultural villages in Southeast Asia, industrial cities in Europe, and isolated island communities in the Pacific with no contact with the outside world. The melodic contour of lullabies, the way the pitch rises and falls in slow, predictable arcs, is strikingly similar across languages and cultures that have had no historical contact whatsoever. Developmental psychologists at Harvard's Music Lab conducted a study in 2018 where they played lullabies from dozens of different cultures to listeners who had never heard them before, and the listeners could reliably identify them as lullabies just from the acoustic features. The songs sounded different, but they felt the same. Because lullabies serve a specific biological function. They regulate infant arousal, lowering cortisol and heart rate while simultaneously strengthening the neural pathways associated with attachment and safety. Before language, before words, human parents were using pitch and rhythm to tell their babies, "You are safe." This impulse to keep singing, to keep making these sounds even when the wolves were circling and the ice was advancing, seemed like a small thing at the time. It was not small at all, because the bonding function of music did not just help parents and children, it helped groups survive. Coordinated rhythmic activity, clapping, stamping, chanting, drumming, allowed early human bands to move together, work together, and fight together with a cohesion that uncoordinated groups simply could not match. Think about it from a practical standpoint. If you need 20 people to drag a mammoth carcass back to camp across a kilometer of frozen ground, you need them pulling at the same time. A rhythmic chant solves that coordination problem instantly. If you need a group of hunters to close in on a herd of bison from multiple directions at once, a drumbeat signals the moment to charge without giving away individual positions through shouting. If you need to intimidate a rival group at a territorial boundary or scare off a cave bear, synchronized shouting and stamping makes your band sound and feel 3 times its actual size. Music was not entertainment for these people. Music was technology. It was a coordination tool with direct, measurable survival benefits. And this is the detail that everyone misses when they think about the origins of music. We tend to imagine early humans sitting around a fire after a hard day, playing a bone flute for relaxation, the campfire jam session. And sure, maybe that happened too, but the deeper reality is that groups who made music together survived at higher rates than groups who did not. The ability to synchronize, to feel what the group was feeling, to move when the group moved, that was a direct survival advantage. And over tens of thousands of years, natural selection favored the brains that responded most strongly to rhythm and melody. The humans who got chills from a perfectly timed drumbeat were the humans whose descendants are alive today. For a while, things actually stayed quiet. Small groups migrating across continents, carrying their songs and rhythms with them, passing musical knowledge from generation to generation through nothing but memory, imitation, and repetition. That was the state of things for most of human history. Thousands of years of music making with no way to write it down, no way to record it, no permanent trace except the occasional bone flute buried in a cave. That did not last. Around 12,000 years ago, humans started farming. The agricultural revolution, which began in the Fertile Crescent region of modern-day Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, transformed every aspect of human existence. People stopped moving. They built permanent shelters from mud brick along river valleys. They dug irrigation channels. Villages grew into towns. Towns became walled cities. And with cities came something music had never had before: a dedicated audience. In a nomadic band of 30 people, music was participatory. Everyone sang. Everyone clapped. There was no distinction between performer and listener. But in a city of 5,000 or 10,000 people, specialization emerged. Some people farmed wheat and barley. Some people built walls and granaries. Some people made pottery and wove cloth. And some people made music. For the first time in human history, there were professional musicians. People whose entire role in society was to create and perform sound. The earliest concrete evidence of this shift comes from Sumer in southern Mesopotamia around 5,000 years ago. Sumerian cuneiform tablets describe temple musicians who performed hymns to the gods Inanna, Enlil, and An as part of daily religious rituals. The tablets reference specific instruments, including large lyres with 11 or more strings, small handheld harps, reed pipes similar to modern oboes, and drums made from stretched animal skin over wooden frames. One cuneiform tablet, dating to roughly 4,000 years ago, contains what many scholars consider the oldest known written melody, a hymn to Nikal, the goddess of orchards. The notation is fragmentary, and scholars disagree about the exact reconstruction, but the fact that anyone was writing music down at all tells you how seriously these people took it. In the 1920s, archaeologist Leonard Woolley excavated the royal cemetery at Ur, in what is now southern Iraq, and found actual lyres buried alongside their owners in elaborate tomb chambers. Gold and silver lyres, decorated with carved bull heads and inlaid with lapis lazuli, imported from hundreds of kilometers away in Afghanistan. These were not folk instruments. They were objects of immense status and value, buried with queens and priestesses. Music had gone from a survival tool used by migrating bands on frozen tundra to a pillar of state religion and royal power in the span of about 30,000 years. But this was not just about Mesopotamia anymore. Across the ancient world, every civilization that reached a certain level of complexity independently developed sophisticated musical traditions. In ancient Egypt, tomb paintings along the Nile Valley dating back more than 4,000 years show musicians playing arched harps taller than the players themselves. Long-necked lutes, double reed pipes, sistrums, and ivory clappers at banquets and religious ceremonies honoring Osiris and Hathor. Some of these paintings depict ensembles of a dozen or more musicians playing together in coordinated groups, with separate sections for different instrument types, which tells you something about the level of musical organization that existed. Egyptian temples employed full-time musicians, and the title of temple musician was a respected position held by both men and women. In China, archaeologists excavating the Neolithic site of Jiahu in Henan province found a set of bone flutes carved from the wing bones of red-crowned cranes. These flutes are roughly 9,000 years old. When researchers at the Brookhaven National Laboratory tested them using precise acoustic measurements, several were still playable after 9 millennia in the ground. They produced a scale remarkably close to the modern 8-note octave. 9,000 years, and the fundamental mathematics of the scale barely changed, which, looking back, was either an astonishing coincidence or evidence that human ears are simply built to prefer certain frequency relationships over others. But the civilization that took music the furthest in terms of understanding was ancient Greece. The Greeks did not just play music, they dissected it. Pythagoras, the same mathematician famous for his theorem about right triangles, discovered in the 6th century, before the Common Era, that musical harmony was governed by simple mathematical ratios. A string cut in half produces a note exactly 1 octave higher. A string divided at a 2:3 ratio produces a perfect fifth. A 3:4 ratio produces a perfect fourth. The entire structure of harmony, the reason certain combinations of notes sound pleasing and others create tension, could be described using nothing but integers. This was a staggering insight. It meant that beauty had a mathematical foundation, that the thing which made humans weep and dance and fall in love and march into battle could be reduced to ratios and proportions. Pythagoras and his followers believed this discovery revealed a deeper cosmic order, what they called the harmony of the spheres, a mathematical music underlying all of reality that human ears could only partially perceive. And the Greeks embedded music into the fabric of their civilization in ways that went far beyond philosophy. Young Athenian citizens were required to study music as part of their formal education, alongside reading, writing, gymnastics, and arithmetic. The word music itself comes from the Greek mousik, meaning the art of the muses, the 9 goddesses of creative inspiration. Greek drama, the foundation of Western theatre, was performed almost entirely in song, with choral odes and accompanied dialogue. The great tragedies of Sophocles and Euripides were closer to opera than to anything we would recognize as a modern stage play. Plato argued in the Republic that certain musical modes, what we might loosely call keys or scales, could shape the moral character of citizens, making them brave or cowardly, disciplined or lazy. He wanted to ban certain modes from his ideal city entirely. Whether you agree with Plato or not, the point is that a civilization most historians consider the birthplace of Western philosophy and democracy treated music not as casual entertainment, but as a force capable of building or destroying an entire culture. Now pay attention to this next detail, because it explains everything about why music became universal across human societies. Every civilization mentioned so far developed its musical traditions independently. The Sumerians did not teach the Chinese how to carve flutes. The Egyptians did not learn scales from the Greeks. The bone flute makers of Ice Age Germany had zero contact with the crane bone flute carvers of Neolithic China, separated by tens of thousands of kilometers and thousands of years. And yet all of them converged on remarkably similar principles. Scales built on mathematically related frequencies, repetitive rhythmic patterns, melodies that rise and fall in predictable arcs. That convergence is not cultural diffusion. It is biological. It is the sound of the human brain expressing what it was built by evolution to express. And neuroscience is now confirming what those ancient civilizations intuited thousands of years ago. Modern brain imaging studies using functional MRI and PET scans show that music activates more areas of the brain simultaneously than virtually any other human activity. Listening to music lights up the auditory cortex, the motor cortex, the prefrontal cortex, the cerebellum, the amygdala, and the hippocampus. Playing music engages all of those regions, plus the circuits responsible for fine motor control, memory retrieval, emotional regulation, spatial reasoning, and real-time decision-making. There is no other single activity that gives your brain a comparable full-spectrum workout. Not mathematics, not language processing, not chess, not even vigorous physical exercise. Music is, neurologically speaking, the most complex thing your brain does voluntarily, and there is a deep reason for that complexity. Music is fundamentally entangled with language at the neurological level. Some linguists, including Stephen Mithen at the University of Reading, have proposed that music and language share a common evolutionary ancestor, a proto-musical linguistic communication system used by early hominids that eventually forked into two branches. Melody and rhythm became music. Structured symbolic sounds became speech. The evidence for this is more than speculative. Music and speech are processed in heavily overlapping brain regions in the left and right temporal lobes. Infants respond to the melodic contour of speech, what linguists call prosody, the rise and fall of pitch that conveys emotion, before they understand a single word. People who suffer certain types of strokes that completely destroy their ability to produce or comprehend speech can sometimes still sing entire songs with perfect lyrics. Melodic intonation therapy, a clinical technique that uses singing to help stroke patients recover speech, works because the musical pathway bypasses the damaged language centers. The two systems are distinct, but intertwined at a level so deep it suggests they grew from the same ancient root. And beyond its connection to language, music served as the original information storage technology, before writing existed. And remember that writing was invented only about 5,000 years ago, while music has been around for at least 40,000. Every important piece of information a society needed to preserve had to be stored in living human memory. Its history, its genealogies, its laws, its practical knowledge about medicinal plants and animal migration patterns and seasonal flood cycles. And the single most effective memory tool ever discovered, more effective than repetition alone, more effective than visual imagery, more effective than any mnemonic device, is melody. Set information to a tune and a rhythmic pattern, and people remember it for decades with minimal degradation. The epic poems of Homer, the Iliad, and the Odyssey were not written down for centuries after they were first composed. They were sung by traveling bards who performed them from memory at festivals and royal courts, and the rhythmic metrical structure of the verse, dactylic hexameter with its recurring melodic and stress patterns, allowed performers to recall tens of thousands of lines with remarkable accuracy over hundreds of years of oral transmission. The same principle shows up on every inhabited continent. West African griot traditions preserve family histories and political records through musical performance lineages stretching back centuries. Australian Aboriginal songlines encode precise navigation routes across thousands of kilometers of desert, with each melodic phrase corresponding to a specific landmark, water source, or geographical feature. Vedic chanting traditions in India have transmitted sacred hymns orally with near-perfect fidelity for more than 3,000 years, verified by comparing independently maintained oral lineages that diverged geographically but remained almost identical textually. Before humans could write a single word, they sang their knowledge into existence and kept it alive through melody. Music was not just art, it was the infrastructure that made accumulated knowledge possible. And this is where the full picture snaps into focus. Music was not a byproduct of civilization, it was a prerequisite. The social bonding it enabled allowed small migratory bands to scale into larger cooperative societies capable of collective projects. The synchronized movement it facilitated made coordinated labor possible, which enabled agriculture, construction, and organized defense. The emotional regulation it provided allowed dense urban populations to live together without constant conflict, channeling collective feeling into ritual and ceremony rather than violence. The mnemonic function it served allowed knowledge to accumulate and transmit across generations long before any writing system existed. And the mathematical principles embedded within musical harmony helped spark the abstract, pattern-seeking thinking that eventually produced science, philosophy, engineering, and mathematics. When you look at it that way, the bone flute from Hohle Fels is not just an interesting artifact sitting behind glass in a university museum. It is one of the most important objects in human history. It represents the moment, or at least a moment we can point to, when a human being decided that survival was not enough, that there was something worth creating beyond weapons and shelters and food stores. That sound itself could be shaped and shared and made into something worth remembering. And that impulse never went away. Every culture that has ever existed on this planet has made music. There is no known human society, past or present, that lacks a musical tradition. You cannot say that about written language. You cannot say it about agriculture or metalworking. You cannot say it about religion in any specific doctrinal form. But music is universal. It predates cities, nations, empires, alphabets, and possibly even our own species. 40,000 years after someone sat in a cold limestone cave in southern Germany and carefully carved 5 holes into the hollow wing bone of a vulture, we still do exactly what they did. We shape sound. We find patterns in vibration. We organize noise into melody and rhythm and meaning. The instruments have changed, from bone to bronze to steel strings to digital synthesizers. The theory has grown from intuitive pattern making to the formal mathematics of acoustics and harmony. The audiences have expanded from a handful of people huddled around a fire in a cave mouth to sold-out stadiums and wireless earbuds streaming music to billions of listeners simultaneously across the planet. But the impulse is identical. The biological need is the same. The feeling is the same. The sound that built civilization was not a grand overture performed for a king. It was not a symphony composed by a genius. It was probably something much simpler. A few uncertain notes drifting out of a dark cave into a frozen European night, heard by a small group of people sitting close together for warmth. And something in their brains responded. Something older than language, older than logic, older maybe than Homo sapiens itself. Something that said, "This matters. Keep doing this." We kept doing it. We are still doing it. And that fragile bone flute, resting now in a climate-controlled display case at the University of Tübingen in Germany, sits as quiet proof that the very first thing humans created, once they had the capacity and the tools and the time to make something beyond the strictly necessary, was music. Before written language, before monumental architecture, before agriculture, music. Sound shaped by intention and shared between minds. 40,000 years, and we have not stopped. If you learned something from this video or it changed the way you think about where music comes from, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment telling us what you think the first song ever played sounded like.